When bullying ends, the world assumes healing begins. But that's rarely true. For many, it's not the act itself that lingers, but the message it leaves behind. The whisper that says, "You're different. You don't belong." Even in adulthood, that whisper hides under new identities. The quiet coworker, the self-doubter, the perfectionist. They wear confidence like armor, but it's often built from fear, not self-belief. The truth is, bullying doesn't stop when the school bell rings. It becomes part of the nervous system, teaching your brain what danger feels like. A tone of voice, a sideways glance, a crowd's laughter. The body still reacts years later, even when the threat is gone. It's not immaturity, it's memory. A memory that says, "You're still not safe." Over time, this conditioning seeps into relationships. They expect betrayal, even from love. They expect rejection, even from praise. Because when pain becomes familiar, comfort feels suspicious. That's why many survivors confuse peace with emptiness. They've never known calm without caution. And perhaps that's the cruelest part of bullying. It rewires safety itself. Even after you've grown, achieved, or succeeded, part of you still scans every room for danger. Because once you've been targeted, the world never feels neutral again. You keep waiting for the punchline that's actually aimed at you. That's the unseen aftermath, the quiet war no one sees. The words people hear while growing up become the voice inside their heads. For those who were bullied, that voice often sounds cruel. "You're not enough. You're too much. You'll never fit in." Eventually, it stops sounding like someone else. It starts sounding like you. That's how bullying turns into self-talk. Self-esteem doesn't vanish overnight. It erodes slowly. Each insult chips away at self-image until they begin believing the lies. Even years later, achievements don't silence that echo. A compliment feels temporary. A smile feels conditional. Love feels like a trick. They've learned that approval is dangerous because it always came before humiliation. Psychologically, this is called internalized shame. It's when you stop fighting the cruelty and start repeating it to yourself. You become your own bully, policing your every move to avoid rejection. It's not a choice. It's conditioning. The brain adapts to pain by making it predictable, but awareness changes everything. When you recognize that your inner critic has someone else's voice, you can finally confront it. You can ask, "Who taught me to speak to myself like this?" And when you realize it wasn't you, healing can begin. Because self-worth isn't built overnight. It's reclaimed, one truth at a time. Some people say, "You should have told someone," but those who were bullied know it's never that simple. Speaking up often made it worse. So silence became armor, not weakness. A shield built from self-preservation, not cowardice. That silence follows them for years. They hesitate to share feelings, afraid their pain will be minimized again. They keep secrets not because they want to, but because being open once came with punishment. It's why so many kind, soft-spoken adults have storms raging inside them. They learn to stay small just to stay safe. Psychologists call this protective inhibition. It's the brain's way of keeping you alive in unsafe environments. But when safety finally arrives, that silence doesn't just vanish. It lingers. You keep holding your breath, waiting for something to go wrong. That's what long-term survival feels like, always half prepared for disaster. Healing starts the moment someone listens without interrupting. When they don't say, "It wasn't that bad," or "That's in the past." Because for those who carried silence as armor, being heard is a radical act. It is how they finally learned that their voice was never the problem. It was the world that was an AT listening. There are 3 roles in every bullying story: the bullied, the bystanders, and the bullies. Each walks away changed. The victims carry pain, the witnesses carry guilt, and the bullies, if they ever grow, carry shame. Some bullies become adults haunted by memories they can't undo. They replay cruel jokes in their minds like old radio static. They remember the tears, the silence, the face that avoided theirs. And no matter how much they've changed, part of them still wonders, did I break someone forever? It's a question that doesn't fade. For witnesses, the pain is quieter but heavy. They saw, they hesitated, they looked away. And now, as adults, they teach their children to speak up because they couldn't. Psychologists call this moral residue, the lasting discomfort of knowing you stayed silent when you could have been kind. Guilt becomes a teacher, harsh but effective. And for the bullied, these realizations bring complicated feelings. Some feel closure when bullies apologize. Others never receive that apology. But the truth is, healing doesn't depend on the other person's regret. It begins when you stop letting their cruelty define your worth. Forgiveness is freedom, not approval. For those who were bullied, trust doesn't come easily. Every new relationship feels like an emotional gamble. They wait for betrayal, not because they want to, but because history trained them to expect it. Even kindness feels suspicious at first. They wonder, what's the catch? It's not paranoia, it's emotional pattern recognition. The brain is wired to detect danger before it repeats, so when someone says, you're too guarded, they're not seeing walls, they're seeing scars. Scars that whisper, last time you opened up, it hurt. So they love cautiously, even when their heart wants to leap. This hypervigilance often confuses partners and friends. They mistake it for coldness or disinterest, but in truth, it's protection disguised as distance. They don't want to test people. They just want to avoid being tested. To them, trust isn't given. It's earned, brick by brick. True safety comes when they meet someone who doesn't rush them, someone who stays patient through their doubt. Because love, to a survivor, isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistency. It's not about who makes them feel alive, but who makes them feel safe while alive. Many people who were bullied grow into overachievers. They excel not because they feel confident, but because they fear insignificance. Every success is a rebuttal to their past humiliation. Every trophy whispers, "You were wrong about me." But it's exhausting to live life as a counter-argument. These people often struggle to rest. Relaxation feels undeserved. The moment things slow down, their old thoughts catch up. What if I'm still not enough? So they keep running, through degrees, jobs, relationships, chasing the proof that they matter. But inner peace never comes from speed. It comes from stopping long enough to feel. Others take the opposite path. They stop trying at all, because failure feels inevitable. Why risk hope when disappointment feels safer? Psychologists call this learned helplessness. When the brain stops fighting pain, it believes it can change. The irony is that both overachievers and underachievers share the same wound, the need to be seen without judgment. One runs toward approval, the other hides from it. Both are still reacting to the same moment, the day someone told them they weren't enough. Healing begins the moment they stop proving and start belonging. Even years later, your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. A laugh that sounds too loud, a room that feels too familiar. The stomach tightens, the breath shortens, and suddenly you're 12 again. That's not imagination. It's the nervous system reliving old danger. It's called somatic memory. For those who were bullied, the body often stays alert long after safety has returned. It's why crowds feel overwhelming, or why compliments trigger discomfort. The body associates attention with pain, and so it protects you, even when you no longer need protecting. That's how trauma disguises itself as personality. Some call it anxiety. Others call it introversion. But sometimes it's just history echoing through the muscles. It's your body saying, I remember what happened here. And that awareness, as painful as it is, becomes the starting point for release. Because you can't heal what you refuse to feel. Healing doesn't erase memory, it rewrites it. Through therapy, mindfulness, or simply safe love, the body learns that not all attention is danger. That laughter can mean joy again. That vulnerability doesn't always end in pain. And one day you realize your body finally exhaled. Some of the kindest people you'll ever meet were once bullied. It's not coincidence, it's transformation. They know what exclusion feels like, so they include others. They know what cruelty feels like, so they lead with compassion. Pain became their moral compass. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, the ability to find strength through suffering. Not in spite of it, but because of it. These individuals turn empathy into their superpower. They build safe spaces because they once needed one. They protect others because no one protected them. But this light doesn't come easy. It's born from years of self-reflection, self-forgiveness, and quiet rebuilding. They had to learn to stop defining themselves by what broke them, to realize what happened to me explains me, but it doesn't define me. That's how survivors become healers. So if you've ever wondered why the gentlest people carry the deepest eyes, now you know. They've walked through darkness and chose not to stay bitter. They turned humiliation into empathy, and that choice, quiet, unseen, uncelebrated, is one of the most powerful acts of humanity. The story of bullying isn't only about pain, it's also about awakening. Many bystanders carry silent regret for what they didn't do, but guilt, if faced honestly, can evolve into compassion. They grow into adults who defend the voiceless, because once they stayed silent, and it haunted them. This awareness creates protectors, teachers who notice the quiet kid in class, managers who intervene when they see workplace cruelty, parents who teach empathy before achievement, because they know what silence costs. For them, redemption isn't about rewriting the past, it's about reshaping the present. Their courage grows from guilt, but their kindness grows from wisdom. They've learned that the smallest act of defense can change a life. Even one sentence, "Hey, that's not okay," can rewrite someone's belief in humanity. And perhaps that's the hidden beauty in all of this. That pain doesn't have to end with pain. That silence can turn into advocacy. And that empathy, once learned the hard way, becomes contagious. If you were bullied and you're still here, that's strength. Not the loud, cinematic kind, but the kind that whispers, "I made it." You survived pain without applause, rejection without rescue, and fear without guidance. You carried the weight of cruelty and somehow still learned how to care. That's resilience at its purest form. But survival isn't the end, transformation is. The moment you realize that the people who hurt you were acting from their own wounds, that their cruelty was never proof of your weakness but of their pain. That's when the story shifts from victimhood to victory, because understanding breaks the chain that revenge never could. And if you were a witness, forgive yourself. You can't change the past, but you can amplify the voices that were once ignored. And if you were a bully, redemption starts with honesty. It's not about guilt. It's about growth, about becoming the kind of person who protects what you once destroyed. So here's the truth. Everyone touched by bullying carries a piece of the lesson. Some learned fear, some learned guilt, some learned empathy, but all of them learned something about humanity. And maybe that's what this story has been about all along. How pain, when faced, becomes wisdom, and how survival quietly becomes love.